The call came at midnight, not by phone, but in a dream. A voice, old and cracked like burnt clay, whispered my name over and over. "Tassan, come home. They are not sleeping, they are still burning." I hadn't been to Egbeko in years. Not since the war made it a graveyard with living people walking through it. Not since the rumors about soldiers setting homes on fire with families inside. Not since my brother, Elon, died, charred and silent, trying to protect his children. But when I woke up that morning, my bags were already packed. Something was pulling me back. Something that did not want to be forgotten. The road into Egbeko was nothing but broken tar and silence. People no longer greeted travelers. The air smelled of wet soil and faint smoke, even though it hadn't rained or burned in days. There were no birds, no goats, not even flies, just absence. I reached the family compound by noon. Half of it was gone. My grandmother's hut was now a pile of blackened rubble. Across the path, Elong's house still stood, barely. Walls scorched, windows gone. But the door was open. I stepped in. Ash covered everything. The floor, the beds. The walls were clothed with black streaks, fingernail scratches, as if someone had tried to escape the fire and failed. In the middle of the room lay a melted metal pot. Inside it were bones, small ones. Old Ma Ikwa, our neighbor, was still alive. She hadn't fled like the others. She greeted me with tears, but no hug. She didn't get too close. "You shouldn't have come, Tassan," she said. "They don't rest here." "Who?" I asked. She looked toward the hills where the sun was dying behind black clouds, the ones who burned, the ones who were not buried. She told me what happened. 6 months ago, soldiers came after midnight, said they were looking for separatists. They herded families into their homes, then set the roofs ablaze. 32 people died, including Elon, his wife, his 2 daughters. One boy survived, hiding in a pit toilet all night, his nose bleeding from smoke. But their souls never left, she whispered. They weren't buried properly. No rites, no libation, just ash and silence. That's why they scream. I slept in my brother's half-burnt house. I shouldn't have. The fire was long gone, but the heat remained. The walls pulsed. The floor creaked like something crawling beneath it. At 1:13 a.m., I woke to footsteps outside. Children's feet, running, laughing, then screaming. I rushed outside, no one. Then I saw the footprints, small, bare, trailing ash from nowhere, leading straight to the old mango tree behind the house, where there was no wind, the branches swayed. Something was watching me, not from the trees, from beneath the earth. The next morning, I met an old Nganga from the next village. He had once performed funeral rites for warriors and kings before the war made rituals illegal. He agreed to come with me to where the bodies had burned. We walked in silence to the center of the village, now called Ash Place. Nothing grew there, even weeds avoided the soil. The Nganga knelt, touched the ground, then flinched. "There is no peace here," he said. "Their bones were never cooled. Their names were never called." He opened a gourd of red palm oil, poured it into a circle, and began to chant. The wind screamed. The ashes lifted, not blown, but pulled into the air, forming a vague, trembling human shape. Then came the whisper, "Where were you, Tarzan?" That night the village lit up, not from fire, but from spirit. They emerged from the homes that had burned, blackened, skeletal, glowing faintly like embers. Men, women, children, their eyes were holes, and from their mouths came smoke. But they didn't attack. They wandered, searching, mourning, calling names. One by one, people began to scream, flee. Some collapsed, choking. Others went as they saw their dead relatives walking with twisted necks and tongues of flame. The child survivor, now 10, ran into the church and shouted, they walk," before collapsing. I saw my brother. He didn't look at me. He walked past, holding the melted pot filled with the bones of his daughters, and wept fire. I tried to leave the next morning, but my car wouldn't start. No one's would. Phones dead, radio silent. The roads had disappeared, literally swallowed by tall grass that had grown overnight. Then the smell returned. Smoke, but no fire. The air shimmered like heat above a stove. People coughed, panicked. Then the screams started again. The flames were back, but this time they weren't from wood. They burst from bodies. One man burst into flames from the eyes out. Another bled ash from his ears before falling like a sack of coal. 3 soldiers hiding in a borrowed house melted into black sludge as children's voices laughed in the wind. The spirit had returned, not to hunt, to collect. I knew what I had to do. We needed to complete the funerals, to cool the bones, to give the dead their names back. We gathered survivors, built a shrine at the center of Ash Place. Ma Ekwa, the child survivor, and the old Nganga helped. We laid out calabashes of water, palm oil, kola nuts, and black feathers. Each name of the dead was called, even those burned beyond recognition. Then we dug shallow graves, 30 of them, and when the final name was spoken, the ash fell from the sky like snow. The silence that followed was sacred. The earth sighed, and the mango tree behind Elong's house bloomed again for the first time in a year. I left Egbeko 1 week later. The roads returned, the birds sang again, but the village will never be the same, not because of what happened, but because the people now remember. They whisper prayers every dusk, they pour libation every full moon, and they never let a death go unburied, because the night the ashes walked, they learned. When you burn the living, their ghost will light your way to judgment, and those ghosts do not forget. They do not rest, they watch. For over 10 years, people in Half Mile, Limbe, had whispered about one man, Pango. He was rich, too rich. No one saw him hustle. No farm, no shop, no taxi, no contract. Yet his mansion near the sea glowed like government house. The strangest thing, even when the heaviest Limbe rain beat down, Pango's shoes stayed dry. Always. That man now winch. Old Ma Pauline would whisper with a shaky voice, "The rain, they fear himself." 15 years ago, Pango was a broke electrician squatting behind Mokundi. No wife, no child, and a cough that could shake zing off rooftops. One day, he disappeared for 3 weeks. When he returned, he was driving a brand new Prado, clean like holy water. His eyes had changed. No more laughter, no more conversation, only silence and money. People asked, "Pango, where this your money they come out?" He smiled and said, "Na the gods of Mount Etinde bless me." The truth? It started deep inside a mangrove swamp near Bakangili. A Babalawo from Nigeria introduced him to a dreaded cult known as Oku-Bi-Eze, the covenant of the king's heart. To join, he had to sacrifice what his heart loved most. Pango had no wife, no child, but he had one person, his junior brother, Titus. He called Titus to come visit him. "Make you come chop barbecue and drink small origin wine," he said. Titus came with joy. That night, inside the mansion's soundproof chamber, Pango pressed a rusted machete into Titus' chest. The boy didn't even get to scream. "The God want waiting safe. The God want waiting sweet," the Babalawo had warned. "Na blood will never lie with woman, pure Peking blood." The next day, his account jumped from 2,000 francs to 1.8 billion CFA francs. Just like that, he built a hotel, bought land in Douala, and imported German jeeps. He became a big man in church, dropping envelopes with 5 million francs CFA during offering. But every year, on the night of the first rain, Pango had to offer a new soul. Sometimes it was a street child, sometimes it was a visiting cousin. He would bring them to his house, feed them fish pepper soup, and when they slept, he would cut their tongues and bury it inside a clay pot behind his mango tree. Nobody suspected, nobody except Mami Dede, the madwoman who sat behind Bonadikombo Junction. She once pointed at his car and shouted, "Snake did drive that motor, na snake inside suit." But even demons have rules. One year, he failed to deliver a proper sacrifice. The homeless boy he picked up was already sick with malaria and died before the ritual began. He thought it was good enough. It wasn't. That night, the walls of his mansion began to bleed. Blood leaked from sockets, mirrors cracked without touch, and in his dreams, Titus returned. Mouth stitched shut, eyes black like charcoal. "Titus no gree rest," whispered the Babalawo. "You no go find small boy again, or else your soul go scatter." Over time, people noticed he was aging backward. At 65, his face looked 30. At 70, he had the chest of a boy where they play football for lycée. But inside, his mind was rotten. He began talking to shadows. He screamed at his own reflection. He burned 10,000 francs notes in his compound just to quiet the spirits. Worst of all, he started eating raw chicken. Ma Pauline swore she saw him chewing feathers one midnight behind his compound, muttering, "Rain no fit touch me, rain no fit touch me, I be fire." When the new pastor from Nigeria came to Limbe, Pastor Elijah, the first thing he said was, "There is a python in this town pretending to be a man." They called for deliverance. Pango laughed. "You want cast waiting? Me? I go buy one at church." But Pastor Elijah poured anointing oil in front of Pango's gate and chanted in Yoruba, French, and tongues. The next night, the rain came inside Pango's house. Not just water, frogs, thousands. They came through the sockets, the windows, the AC vents, croaking, screaming. Pango ran outside naked, shouting, "Them don't break the covenant, I go die." They found him the next morning at Down Beach, sitting inside the water, bleeding from the mouth. His tongue was missing, eyes wide open, skin wrinkled like old goat meat. He looked 90 years old. Beside him, written in blood on the sand, "Rain don't touch me." No one claimed the body. The mansion burnt mysteriously 2 days later. No fire truck arrived, only Mami Dede passed by and whispered, "When devil give you shoe, he go ask for your food." Years later, the land was sold to build a guest house. But during foundation work, the workers found a pot. Inside it, 10 tongues, preserved like they were buried just yesterday. The project was abandoned. To this day, that land remains empty. Even grass refuses to grow. And whenever first rain falls in Limbe, people say, "Rain no be water. Some rain dey wash secrets."